be giving us a presentation that reflects on the stories shared by neurodiverse older adults and their family caregivers. I'll ask all questions. Please write them in the box, and Tiana will monitor them for the end.
Wonderful. Well, oh, sorry.
No, I'm just going to pass the chair.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for being with us here today. So my name is Laura Pacheco. I'm an assistant professor and a co-investigator in this project. I'm currently at Memorial University in the beautiful province of Newfoundland and Labrador. And Dr. Shari Brotman, who's an associate professor and the principal investigator of this project, is from McGill University and is here with us today, but I will be doing the presentation, and Shari will be there for questions and for the discussion as well. So we're really happy to be here to talk to you about our project, learning from the experiences of social exclusion among neurodiverse older adults and their family caregivers, lessons for the development of meaningfully inclusive policies and practices within health and social services. We really look forward to hearing, what resonates with you, especially as you hear the stories of neurodiverse older adults and their family caregivers, and also service providers who were interviewed within this study. There we go. So we want to pay a special thanks to Fonds de Recherche, Société et Culture Québec that subsidize this project, and Société Culture with the financial support from the Ministère des Affaires municipales et d'Habitation, the Ministère des Migrations, de la Francisation et de l'Intégration, and the Ministry of Health and Social Services under the Concerted Actions Program. So today we're going to talk to you about the project, about the objectives, about the methods that were used, and especially about the participants and their stories and what we heard, particularly around the gaps and challenges in health and social service systems. And we're going to talk about the challenges, but we're also going to talk about the strengths, the resilience, and the resistance to oppression that came out of their stories. We're also going to take a few minutes to view a clip of the play that was done on Neurodiversity, Age Together, Act Together, and we'll tell you a little bit more about how that came to be and how we've used it so far in the project as well. And we really look forward to hearing your thoughts, your reactions, and your questions as well. So to begin, we wanted to say that our project explored the experiences of both social exclusion and inclusion amongst neurodiverse older adults and their family caregivers in Montreal and in Quebec City. Our goal was to collect stories about their lives, their experiences of growing older, their strengths, their hopes and their dreams, their housing realities, their needs and their wishes, their experiences with health and social services, and also in relation to their informal and their formal social networks. We also spoke with service providers to gain their perspectives on the realities and challenges facing older adults living with neurodiversity and their families as well. So as I mentioned, Dr. Shari Brotman is the principal investigator in the project, and there were a number of co-investigators and collaborators and researchers and research assistants within the project, throughout the project, as well as our advisory committee, as you can see here, that was comprised of people in community organizations, so Avital, for example. We also had a representative from le CREGE-S, as well as people with lived experiences who were with us throughout the research project. So these are our wonderful partners that were engaged throughout and who we wouldn't have been able to do this project without them. So in order to contextualize the project and sort of have, I guess, some common definitions of some of the key terms in the project, we wanted to take a few seconds to go through that together. So for us, the term neurodiversity is really an umbrella term that was first developed by autistic self-advocates and allies in the disability rights community. And it was really to bring together a broad diversity of neurocognitive disabilities and differences that are mostly, but not always, diagnosed in childhood. So the term neurodiversity has started to be recognized within health and social service settings and in society at large. And neurodiverse people include those living with an intellectual disability, with autism, fetal alcohol syndrome, Down syndrome, amongst others as well. Social exclusion, again, was a big part of our study, and we know that neurodiverse older adults and their family caregivers face significant social exclusion throughout their lives. Interlocking oppressions create inequitable conditions that negatively affects people's health and well-being, social inclusion, and also agency. So in other words, social exclusion occurs when we are blocked from participating meaningfully in society, in our schools, workplaces, healthcare settings, and in our neighborhoods as well. So social exclusion limits our capacity to act, to choose, and to be included fully and meaningfully in the decisions that affect our lives. And this was a theme that that came out of the study as well. So social inclusion is when we are supported by people we trust, when our opinions are respected, when we have opportunities to participate fully, and when we live free from discrimination and stigma. Then we are living the best conditions in order to enact agency and to experience social inclusion. So relational autonomy and agency was also embedded within our project. And relational autonomy refers to the idea that our relationships and contexts matters within decision-making and beyond. And meaningful and consistent engagement is key to establishing relationships of trust in which people are encouraged and supported to maximize their own agency about the everyday matters that concern them. And agency is the ability to do and to determine for oneself. So our project was really embedded within the disability community mantra, nothing about us with us. And so you're going to hear us talking about the fact that our study foregrounded the experiences of people aging with neurodiversity and their family caregivers. We also interviewed service providers in public sector and community sector services in relation to aging, disability, and mental health. We also engaged with decision makers in government at federal, provincial, as well as municipal levels, and with advocacy groups in the areas of older adults, disability, and neurodiversity sectors, particularly within our advisory groups. Oops. Okay. So, this is the context that has influenced our study, or that underpins our study. I mean, many of us know that there have been, advances in medical treatments, that there has been a move from institutional to community care, and there has been the development of better supports that have contributed to increasing both the life expectancy and the quality of life of neurodiverse people. Nonetheless, the reality of aging among neurodiverse people is still not well recognized or understood within society and within health and social services. So there is a significant gap in current policies and services across sectors that, again, we'll be talking about a little bit more today. And self-advocates for decades and their allies have time and time again reminded us that more must be done to create an inclusive, equitable, and socially just society. So now we're going to get into our project. And the objectives of the research project were to promote recognition and understanding of people aging with neurodiversity and their families by documenting their stories. It was to understand the perspectives of people aging with neurodiversities and their families, and also service providers who were involved in their support and their care. Another objective was to develop recommendations that can inform inclusive policy and practice in order to better address the realities and challenges faced by neurodiverse older adults and their families. And the last one is to promote the rights and dignity of people aging with neurodiversity and their families. So the intersectional life course perspective is what underpinned the study. And an intersectional life course perspective takes into account key events in people's lives and the structural forces that these events help people both experience and make sense of these events. So there are four linked steps in the intersectional life course perspective. The first is related to identity. Who we are, our position in society, and agency, so the ability to act and decide. The second is related to linked lives, so formal and informal relationships. The third is related to othering, so exploring, a process whereby individuals and groups are treated as different or less than by a dominant social group. And then the last step, or step number 4, is related to exploring resilience and resistance. So looking at coping and looking at fighting against discrimination within different contexts. So we know that older neurodiverse adults face significant health disparities and social exclusion across the life course, and that disability, race, ethnicity, gender, class, and age can further impact their social exclusion. So now we're going to get into our methodology. So we used a life story narrative research, and this is a method that centers on the co-creation and power sharing through conversations between researchers and our participants about their life experiences. We wanted to hear about important events and important moments in people's lives, the relationships that they were involved in, and the meanings that they attribute to them. The Lifeline and Care Lines are arts-based, they're creative, they're also accessible research tools that really allow us to engage in conversations about people's lives, their strengths, the challenges, and also thinking about how their personal experiences are linked to institutional and political forces. So we see here on the left is a lifeline, and you can see the political structures. So you have the CLSC, Aide Sociale, and you can see how the lifeline is constructed in relation to different points in times in their lives. The lifeline on the right, this was drawn by a neurodiverse older adult, and you can see their drawings. You can see the meaningful people and moments that were important to them to include in their story. So our process, and I'll go through this quite quickly, but just to say that we started with outreach and recruitment for neurodiverse older adults. We went through a consent and assent process. Then we had the first narrative interview and drafted the life and care line. In that second interview, we often delve deeper on into the underfleshed sort of themes that maybe came out of interview one. Then we updated the life and care line and draft portrait, and then we shared that with each participant so that they can tell us about, was it accurate? How was there things that they wanted to omit, or edit? So this was given back to them. And then within the research project, we did a thematic analysis within and across the three cohorts. So that's neurodiverse older adults, family caregivers, and service providers. And then we did a policy analysis on housing and health and social care, and that led us to our final report, our exhibits, and our policy briefs. So who are our participants? So we interviewed 21 people aging with neurodiversity between the ages of 45 and 78 years old. We had 15 family caregivers, 8 of whom were parents and 7 with whom were siblings. And we had 27 service providers who participated in this study. And as you can see, there are different lifelines that were drawn either by the participant or in co-construction with another participant. And the lifeline that you see in the middle that's kind of circular is Christine's intersectional life circle. And this, was the way in which life is conceptualized. And you could see the agency and identity as somebody who's Cree, who's a music lover, who's friendly, daughter, sister, aunt, spiritual, foodie, fun-loving, courageous, and self-advocate. So it also included their identity within the care lines. So now we're going to talk about what we learned from the participants. So there were a number of themes that came out of the research project, and a few of them we'll touch upon today, but we're particularly going to talk about the gaps and challenges in the health and social service system. So aging was a theme that did come up in the study, and participants had sometimes mixed emotions about aging. So some participants talked about, aging being a part of life. Some participants talked about some of the fear and sadness that they had about aging, and particularly as they saw their parents aging. And so this was reflected in their life stories. So we're going to share a few quotes of some of the participants, and you could see most of them there. But Lisa's was one of the quotes that was quite striking to us. And she says, I don't know who will take care of me if it happens that my parents can't one day. I told them. They say, don't talk. Don't think about it. So you can hear the fear that she has, and how there's not a lot of opportunities to talk about those fears. So the next theme that we'll spend some time on is related to gaps and challenges in the health and social service system. So participants talked about how they felt that it was only in times of crisis that the service system would respond to their needs, that they sometimes felt that there were some barriers to access, and that sometimes if there were multiple service providers involved, that sometimes there was limited intersectorial collaboration or communication. So the first one speaks to a lack of support for intersecting identities, and this is from a service provider, Melissa, who says, you know, I think it is really at the intersection of they are lacking in supports of people living with ND, and they are lacking in supports for the aging population. It is a certainty that when you put these two issues together, the situation does not look good. They are at the intersection of two extremely vulnerable populations and for whom there is not necessarily a service offer that meets their needs. So that was reflected in the stories of participants and service providers, as well as family caregivers. So we also have some more quotes here that speaks to the complexities related to labeling and criteria in health and social services. And so this first quote talks about the rigidity sometimes in the system related to diagnoses, and how if you meet he doesn't have a diagnosis, so he doesn't meet the criteria. So I'd say overall, it's by far the biggest challenge that we face. So that's an important component there. And the second one, you know, often their diagnosis will result in them being labeled, which means that suddenly people will say, well, it is not my service. It's not me that deals with that. And addressing the issue takes much longer because it takes time to find the right person who can respond. So participants also talked about that, how they felt like sometimes they were passed from different services without little understanding or communication about what was happening. So the participants and families also talked about the emotional impact of the gaps and challenges in health and social service systems. And Audrey talks about how when there are changes in workers, that it's like losing a friend, and that it hurts and that it impacts her, and other participants also spoke to that difficulty. So these speak to a lack of integrated services. So talking about how, you know, the service system is taxed, that, you know, there have been some cutting down of services, and that if there becomes an emergency, so crisis oriented, that they can take care of it. So participants also spoke to some of the mental health challenges, how sometimes there was a misdiagnosis, how there was sometimes a lack of training for somebody related to a neurodiverse older adult that has mental health issues, so not having training necessarily in all of those facets. And Marco talks about psychiatric hospitalization in particular. And, you know, he talks about how there have been a few that have been on psychiatric units for a very, very long time and years, and how this has impacted potentially their health, and there's been a regression. And Lisa talks about her experience in a psychiatric hospital, saying that it reminds me of a prison. So again, in relation to mental health challenges, the lack of integrated services was an ongoing theme. And Thomas, a service provider, says, you know, yes, seriously, they call it a zoo. Colleagues say that you have to go to your interview with the specialized ND and mental health team, and good luck. It's interesting to see that in a psychiatric milieu, like, there is real prejudice, not ill-intended, but it is the force of things on the realities of people with neurodiversity. So housing was another theme that came up, particularly related to wait lists and lack of services. And, Lily talks about how, we have parents who are in their 80s and they put their adult child on a wait list for 10 years for residential services, and they're still not called off the waiting list. But if an emergency happens, they will be prioritized at that time. Caregiving was a central theme within our study as well, and caregivers talked about both the challenges and the love that they have either for their sibling or their adult child. Um, the notion of parallel aging, when both the person living with neurodiversity and their family caregivers are aging at the same time, and how this could put more stress on care capacities and care arrangements, as well as health and well-being. So it's an important facet to consider in service provision. So, we talked about many of the challenges that older neurodiverse adults face, but they also talked about strengths, resilience, and resistance, and what they enjoyed doing and how they engaged and participated in their community. So, Audrey talks about the fact that she was a member of the users committee, and Dede talks about how at 68 was a volunteer of the year and was really proud in having her plaque at her house. So our study really speaks to the intersections of ageism, saneism, and ableism. You see how all three of ageism, saneism, and ableism speak to stigma, prejudice, infantilization, controls, health disparities, and also denial of rights. So now that we've talked about the themes that have emerged, these are some of the recommendations that have been identified and that have come out from the study, which is to reduce diagnostic-based exclusion criteria, to ease access barriers, to train staff to counter misinformation, bias, and discomfort amongst professionals, to develop specialized and trauma-informed support teams for people who have experienced psychiatric hospitalization and who are older neurodiverse adults, to avoid psychiatric labeling of people presenting with complex challenges by creating specialized and interdisciplinary teams in every CIS or CIUS, to integrate a life course approach to ensure long-term and continuous interventions that are operationalized through the intervenant pivot across directorates. And as we talked about, addressing the issue of parallel aging within public policies and service provision, and that integrated, intersectoral, and specialized service for neurodiverse older adults and their family aging caregivers are identified. So reducing silos in the provision of services in order to favor intersectional and interdisciplinary collaboration, transfer of knowledge and training, to include neurodiverse older adults and their family caregivers in all aspects of decision making and in advance of care planning. To promote fair and equitable caseload distribution amongst service providers, to increase funding for public and community sector services geared specifically to neurodiverse adults and their family caregivers, to also think about putting in place specialized, multidisciplinary, and interprofessional teams in regions of Quebec, and to create an independent interministerial structure in order to collaboratively redress all the issues relating to disability, neurodiversity, and aging in Quebec. So we also wanted to share a video. So this was a video of a performance that took place on May 27th, 2024 in Montreal. And it was a collaboration with la gang à Rembrou et sans oublier le sourire, and was choreographed by Jasmine Alain Côté. And the actors that you see there in the picture are neurodiverse older adults. And they performed the play, which was very touching and I think really resonated with the audience around the themes that emerged from the study. And we're going to show you part of that video today, but you can see the full video here on YouTube with that link over there. So I'm going to now
So
play
I just
that.
want to mention, which is important, is that the actors were part of a troupe from La Gang à Rembrou. They were not participants in our study.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. Please let me know, and I can't see anybody, so please let me know if you can't hear this.
Some workers are hard. They have to understand because I have disabilities. I have trouble understanding things.
Les intervenants, je les aime. J'apprécie qu'ils nous aident beaucoup et qu'ils nous respectent. Nous autres, avec, on les respecte. C'est sûr que des fois, on les agace, mais ils aiment ça.
Il y a tellement de nouveaux employés dans le réseau public. Il y a beaucoup de roulements personnels. Dans les écoles aussi. Ça fait que les gens n'ont pas le temps de se former en TSA. Ils sont garochés dans un poste puis ils connaissent pas vraiment ça. Ça donne ce que ça donne.
J'ai toujours eu des intervenants, mais ça changeait tout le temps. Pourtant, je faisais rien de mal. C'est juste qu'il y avait des familles, là, eux autres avec, puis là, ben, des fois, ils se faisaient appeler dans la nuit quand je piquais des crises. Fait que là, ben, c'était dur pour eux autres. Ils se trouvaient autre chose ailleurs.
J'ai le droit à l'aide comme personne autiste. J'appelle, puis mon Dieu, ils sont tellement débordés partout maintenant. Il n'y a pas vraiment d'aide. La personne dit tout simplement.
Ça dit bien lit. Tout est expliqué sur le site.
Mais je pense que les gens ne se rendent pas compte qu'on a besoin d'un petit plus.
Encore, ben lit. Tout est expliqué sur le site.
Ce qui arrive, là, quand on a des intervenants, là, je viens que je m'attache. Je leur parle, je confie c'est des choses. Quand il y a un changement, c'est comme si je perdais une amie. J'en ai perdu beaucoup quand j'étais proche d'eux autres. Ça me fait de la peine, ça me blesse. C'est vraiment comme si je perdais une amie. C'est simple.
The workers, they change like underwear. It's pathetic.
The doctor says, sorry, the time is up. It's like you only have 20 minutes. I feel like you have to cram it all in. Like, hello, it's difficult. It's crazy. No follow-up.
Time's up.
Les choses vont changer quand le monde va vouloir changer. Ceux qui nous entourent, médecins, proposés, et infirmiers, personne de parfait. Il n'y a personne de parfait. Avoir un handicap intellectuel ou autre, on est les mêmes personnes que les gens sur la rue. Les mêmes sentiments, mêmes valeurs et croyances.
Les étiquettes vont sur le pot, pas sur les personnes.
Talking about dignity, I really wish people would accept people the way they are and give them exactly what they deserve, the dignity that they want. Instead of always saying, oh, look at her, she's a person that just needs to have their dignity.
On a tous un handicap, peu importe, on est tous pareils.
Oh. C'est vrai que j'ai un handicap, j'ai une déficience intellectuelle. Est-ce que j'ai vraiment le contrôle sur ma vie? Ou bien, est-ce que j'ai des limites? Ben oui, j'en ai, c'est des limites. Je peux accomplir plein de choses. Hey! Vous autres, spectateurs, regarde. Oh, excusez. Regardez-nous, là! C'est parce que. C'est pas parce que. Quelqu'un qui me parle, bien, parce qu'on ne comprend pas. Bon. Ça prend du temps. Mais au moins, parlez-nous de façon normalement. Puis, regardez-nous avec des yeux honnêtes.
So that's the end of the clip that we wanted to share, but we certainly would love to hear from you in terms of what your reflections and thoughts and what resonate with you in relation to that clip and of course the whole presentation. So here is the website where you can find a link to the video, where there are infographics of the project. There's also a toolkit that was designed to accompany the full performance, the video that you saw, about the full 30 minutes, that was really designed to support reflection and action in relation to service providers, community workers, and even students and interns. There's also a section for neurodiverse older adults to think about the emotions that they experienced during the film. And one of our research assistants did a visual of the different emotions that they can have and that they can circle as they listen and then think about the film. And then there's also a section for family caregivers that is on in toolkit as well. The picture on our left is a picture of Shari and her team. There are some research assistants in there, some co-investigators, some students, and the picture on the right is one of the actresses in the play that you saw just a few minutes ago. So I think that's the last slide. We wanted to thank you so much for being here. And I don't know if Shari, if you have anything that you want to say in relation to the website or.
No, I didn't. Just if people have questions or comments. I'm not sure if anybody here was at that event, but one thing that we heard back from a lot of service providers in the system who attended the event to say how meaningful it was, to have a research project acted out by performers, and it reaches people's hearts in a different way. So.
Yeah, I think, as you were saying, Shari, I think people were really touched, whether they were a service provider or a neurodiverse older adult or a family caregiver, to sort of see and hear not just their experiences, because it might not have been their experiences, but an experience that resonated with them, that they haven't had a chance to hear before.
Yeah.
I just want to extend a very huge thank you to Laura and Shari for presenting this on behalf of the Midis Multi committee and RCS as well for your amazing work. There aren't any questions in the chat right now, but if anyone does have comments or questions, you're welcome to put them in or raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Just a comment, it's just so nice and so impactful to see the accessible and creative approach you guys took with the research to really make it in a language that your participants and everyone was on the same plane for their language. So the arts-based and the drama-based approach is so accessible for everyone. And in some ways levels the playing field, because a lot of people get really freaked out when they have to do art and drama.
Yes.
Being the music therapist among us, I was like, it's a very leveling playing field. We're all like, oh no, I feel very scared when we're not speaking maybe the language I'm as comfortable with. Whereas many of our older adults in the neurodiverse spectrum may be very comfortable expressing themselves with pictures or gestures. So it's a very refreshing approach. So thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I have questions for the audience, for any of you to answer. If we think about some of the main service gaps that were expressed in the study, I want to know if these resonate with folks. The most important one, I think, is related to silos. How different directorates don't necessarily speak to each other, how people can get transferred and then lose their workers, how the knowledge transfer doesn't necessarily pass from one directorate or one system to another. And the other thing is the ongoing issue, I think, that we all know about, which is the rollover of workers. And especially, I mean, our research took place during COVID, so we know how even much more intense that situation was with worker turnover and burnout. Are these things that resonate with folks that are here listening? If anybody wants to share.
Aralie?
Je pense que c'est une réalité là, à laquelle on n'échappe pas. C'est pas facile de recruter du monde dans des ITSA, là. Puis souvent, quand les personnes sont recrutées, ben, il y a quand même une peur à appliquer sur ces postes-là parce qu'on n'est pas spécialiste. Puis des fois, on se dit qu'est-ce qu'on va faire. Fait que c'est sûr que ça résonne beaucoup là, chez moi, en tout cas. Puis ça m'a beaucoup émue de voir ce qui est ressorti de cette recherche-là. Parce que c'est ce que les personnes nous témoignent, quand ils nous disent ben, je sens que c'est la première personne qui m'écoute réellement ou c'est difficile de se dire ben, qu'ils vivent ça tout le temps, puis on and on. Fait que c'est ça.
Yeah.
En tout cas, moi, ça me parle beaucoup, là, puis je pense qu'on gagnerait à peut-être aller chercher plus de formation ou d'être mieux outillé pour intervenir avec les personnes, surtout en contexte de, tu sais, de vieillissement. Il y a peu de recherches ou peu d'écrits, en tout cas, que moi je connaisse, à mon avis, sur cette clientèle spécifique là, qui a des besoins tu sais, différents. J'ai travaillé en RI, tu sais, puis il y en avait, puis ils ne fitaient pas nécessairement dans une RI avec des personnes tu sais, neurotypiques, puis c'est difficile de les desservir de la bonne façon quand on ne sait pas comment faire, tu sais. Fait que, voilà, c'est pas mal ça. Et merci pour cette présentation, vraiment.
Et merci beaucoup à toi, Aurélie, pour tes réflexions et puis, tu sais, d'être capable de dire que c'est les expériences qui sont vécues, tu sais, sur le terrain et puis et que c'est difficile et que ça fait partie de notre système présentement. Et j'apprécie beaucoup aussi le fait que tu soulignes que tu sais, le training, c'est important, le training intersectionnel aussi, c'est important. Euh, c'est ça. Mais merci pour tes réflexions.
Julie Lebrun?
Oui, effectivement. Il y a plusieurs facteurs, je pense, au manque de continuité dans les ressources puis au changement des intervenants. Il y a effectivement le fait que ce n'est pas souvent des emplois qui sont très attirants parce que c'est une clientèle méconnue qui souffre de tous les préjudices, alors que quand on les rencontre et qu'on travaille avec eux, c'est souvent ça qui fait qu'on reste avec cette clientèle-là puis qu'on travaille longtemps dans ce domaine-là, c'est pour la clientèle. Mais il y a toute l'organisation des services aussi. Les listes d'attente sont tellement longues que je pense que tous les établissements puis les équipes essaient de trouver des façons de pouvoir desservir le plus de personnes. Mais en même temps, comme il n'y a pas plus de ressources, ben, ça fait qu'on dessert peut-être plus de monde, mais on les dessert moins bien. Ou on va les desservir par ces fameux épisodes de service-là qui font qu'on va leur donner un petit peu de service à un certain moment donné, puis après ça, on change. Puis ça, bien, les épisodes de service, c'est impossible à gérer, puis de redonner le même intervenant à la même personne. Ça peut pas fonctionner. Mais il y a aussi d'autres facteurs qui sont difficiles à contrôler. Si on rajoute les congés de maternité, si on rajoute les départs à la retraite, tout le fait que c'est extrêmement difficile de trouver des employés pour remplacer les gens qui s'en vont, mais ça finit par faire un gruyère qui est bien aéré, là, qui a beaucoup de trous dedans. Alors, du point de vue des usagers, c'est certain que pour eux, ça fait beaucoup, beaucoup de changements. Puis pour des gens, on sait qu'une de leurs difficultés, c'est aussi la capacité d'adaptation, les habiletés et le besoin aussi de s'identifier puis de s'attacher à quelqu'un parce que justement, la société les rejette, ils sont exclus de la société. Alors, quand ils ont un intervenant qui finit par, oui, être formé, oui, les comprendre, mon Dieu, que c'est plus facile pour eux, bien, ils vont s'attacher. Alors, je trouve ça, c'est très triste de devoir leur dire, oh, ben moi, je m'en vais, mais je ne sais pas quand est-ce que tu vas avoir quelqu'un d'autre qui va revenir, tu sais. Je pense que le système n'est pas conçu pour aider ces usagers-là. Le système est conçu pour faire de la spécialisation. Tout le reste du système fonctionne par diagnostic, fonctionne par épisode, fonctionne avec un modèle où tu es malade, on te donne une solution et tu guéris. Et on essaie de l'appliquer à cette clientèle-là, puis ça ne fonctionne clairement pas. Là. On ne le réfléchit pas en fonction de l'usager, on le réfléchit en fonction du fonctionnement de notre système. Alors, c'est compliqué.
Oui, et aussi, je peux ajouter peut-être aussi l'isolement social qui est très, très profond. Profond, est-ce qu'on dit ça? Profond?
Oui.
Excuse-moi mon français. Et alors, des fois, leur intervenant, c'est la seule personne comme ils voient d'avoir une petite comme relation, conversation. Et oui, c'est dur pour eux autres. Ils ont parlé beaucoup de le fait que l'épisode service, c'est comme une fois par année ou une fois par 6 mois. Puis s'il y a une crise, ben après, s'il y a une crise, quelque chose se passe. Mais vous l'avez bien expliqué. Merci beaucoup, Julie, pour vos réflexions.
Puis je
Alors,
voudrais juste rajouter, c'était très intéressant l'approche intersectionnelle parce que justement, le système va essayer de les classer et puis à un moment donné, vivre avec une déficience, déjà, il n'y a pas ou de la neurodiversité, il n'y a pas beaucoup de services. Pour les personnes âgées, il n'y en a pas d'autres. Dans certains cas, on peut même rajouter les personnes en situation d'itinérance où on retrouve une grosse population de personnes avec une déficience intellectuelle et qui sont âgées. Et si on met ces trois-là ensemble, on les perd, c'est certain.
oui, ils sont passés de l'un à l'autre.
Oui.
Oui.
Donc, c'est un modèle intéressant à utiliser pour analyser leur situation.
Le gouvernement parle beaucoup de la personne pivote. Je ne sais pas comment vous autres pensez de cette position, si ça pourrait améliorer des choses. From our side of things, the person pivot has to follow the person along their whole, toute la trajectoire de vie, même quand elle passe d'un directorat de l'autre, des TSA ou au SAPA, puis tout santé mentale, je ne sais pas. Puis, we hear that it's also hard to find people to fill those positions. I don't know. Do you operationalize the personne pivot at your CUS? Pas vraiment? No, I see a lot of
I'm not
no's.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember when I was at CES Zim that there was a personne pivot, but it was personne pivot within that directorate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I think, for speaking from my own directorate, I think that's how I've mostly seen it. We'll go to Gina and then Marla, and then I think we'll be out of time.
Hi, thank you so much for this great presentation. My name is Gina Mills, and I'm in charge of professional practice for multidisciplinary services here at the CS. So everything that you're saying is, I mean, yes, it really speaks. I think you've knocked it. You guys have put it to a T, what we're dealing with. I think that all of it really strikes with us. I think in terms of the intervenant pivot, there are some, but is the role really understood? It's definitely not transversal. And what really spoke to me is working in silos. And it's not even just with this population, it's across the board, but it's really important that we work more together and that we don't think of ourselves. And we always say that, right? We're this directorate. In professional practice, we have a transversal mandate, but getting everybody to communicate and understand what's going on, transferring that information like you were talking about, knowing who to reach out to, when to reach out to them. And I think also looking at our clients in terms of what are their needs, not treating them because of their diagnoses. Like you said, it's sort of across a bunch of different diagnoses or a bunch of different needs, and everybody is individualized. So there's no cookie cutter recipe that's going to treat everybody based on a certain diagnosis, based on whatever. It's how do we treat what your needs are, right? And I think that those things really speak to me. Solutions on how to do that, I don't know. That was my question to you. It's great that they came up with all this stuff that we understand as well, but helping to come up with those solutions and listening to, the clients themselves, what would work best for them, I think is kind of a piece that we're missing as well, because we think we have some solutions, but making sure that we're including them in those discussions as well. So we are meeting their needs. But yes, it definitely speaks to us, and I think we're all on the same page. So thank you so much for the presentation. It was wonderful.
One of the things I think that could maybe serve as a model, even though I know we're probably really close to being out of time, is the caregiver policy that was developed in Quebec, where there's an action plan that addresses the CUS level, and that there has to be like a caregiver expert to draw upon, that people hopefully will know about. Somebody's identified and trained as that expert. We need more than one, of course, in every site at each CIUS, but we also need that kind of like a policy perspective for this field of neurodiversity and aging. So we create not only an individual expert per site, but also a team, a multidisciplinary team that people know about and can draw upon for expertise. And, the transfer of knowledge, right? Even between when workers change and between sites and sectors is really problematic, because even in our study, there's a number of participants that shared horror stories of falling through the cracks, even simply that somebody didn't inform somebody else because they moved residences or they were hospitalized, etc. So having, I think a CIUS level protocol for managing transfer of files or informations, I think could be a practical and beneficial thing to have and educate people around so they know exactly who needs to be informed with steps in those particular transition moments.
And I think that relates back to the communication too, Shari. Thank you for, we do it like, even though you have a PMP on transfer of information, but how does that, apply, and how do you implement it within your sections, right? And across sections. So absolutely, we hear you. And we are, I must just say, giving a plug out there to Zelda Freitas. She's one of my team members, and we are so very fortunate to have her within our CIUS. So I think we're ahead of the game, but that's just me.
I'm going to give a minute to Marla as well before we go. But before I do that, Marla, I just wanted to mention to everyone in the chat that there is a survey just to tell us a little bit how you appreciate the presentation, if you have any suggestions, and if you have any projects to present in the future. And then there's just a commentary from Gail in the chat. Les personnes âgées neurodivergentes hautement fonctionnelles perdent souvent leur habileté communicationnelle et relationnelle lors de la retraite. L'isolement en devient la conséquence. So, good comment, thank you.
True.
And
Very
Marla,
true.
will send it to you as well for the last one.
Yeah, no, just, hearing, well, first of all, it was a wonderful, wonderful presentation. And I just really second, what Gina stated, as well as Shari. I mean, I've been part of SAPA for about 23 years, and I've certainly seen within time, the clients, aging, and that, they're initially in DI-TED and now they, come to SAPA. And, I think it would be good if we even create some sort of working team where, SAPA and DI-TED come together, because it's something that, certainly, I go through all the referrals for socials for Renee Cassin in SAPA, and it's something that, definitely, on a weekly basis I see. So I think, that's good, because we certainly do work within silos. I think I've seen that, unfortunately, more ever since the CIUSs became, 5 amongst itself, as opposed to before when we were just, C3S Cavendish and C3S de la Montagne. So that's something maybe to look at. And even with the mental health team too, years ago, there used to be committees. And I think just with everything with COVID, the change of staff, certain things fell to the wayside, and it's something that needs to be implemented again.
Yeah, I think the mental health is really important to include the mental health directorate, because a lot of people, particularly aging with neurodiversity, there are experiences of co-occurring mental health challenges and neurodiversity that go, again, the transfer back and forth. Either you have to be one or the other. And it really complicates when we don't have a more holistic view, because people either get psychiatrized because of behavioral challenges and communication challenges, or they're underdiagnosed when they can really use some mental health support. So yeah, it would be great to have that kind of working group.
So if anyone starts that, and if they'd like to reach out to me, I'm happy to.
Marla's in. Thank you again so much, Laura and Shari, for this amazing presentation. The links were available, and we will also, I think, have it on the Midis Multi SharePoint as well, to things from today. Thank you very much for taking some time.
Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care. Have an excellent afternoon.
Erika, est-ce qu'on va pouvoir avoir accès à l'enregistrement? Oui, Diana, parce que j'ai deux
Oui.
étudiants qui travaillent avec les TSA, puis j'ai comme ce
Oui,
serait
je
super
pense qu'on va le
intéressant
mettre
qu'ils
sur le
écoutent.
SharePoint. Ouais, sur le
Et
SharePoint
c'est
Très
Meeting
chouette.
Multi.
c'est